Dear viewers, the following stories are inspired by real events. However, the names of the characters have been changed to protect privacy. In July 2011, in the city of Coronado, California, a luxurious beachfront villa called Coronado Mansion suddenly became the scene of a heartbreaking and mysterious incident. To protect the privacy of those involved, we will refer to the victim as Rebecca White. Rebecca White, a young, beautiful and passionate woman, was in a romantic relationship with a successful businessman named Jonah Black. At the time of the incident, Rebecca was staying at Coronado Mansion, a property owned by Jonah, with Jonah's 6-year-old son, who had just been in a serious accident. For privacy, we will call the boy Max. On July 13, 2011, Jonah Black called the police to report the discovery of Rebecca's body at the Coronado Mansion. When the police arrived at the scene, they found Rebecca dead, hanging from the second-floor balcony of the mansion. Strangely, her hands and feet were tied, and her mouth was stuffed with a cloth. Rebecca White's death caused a shock-wave in public opinion. With the unusual details at the scene, many people did not believe that this was a suicide. They raised many questions about her death, and thought that it could be a sophisticatedly staged murder. The police conducted a thorough investigation, collected evidence, and questioned those involved. Jonah Black stated that he was not at the mansion at the time of the incident. He said that he was elsewhere to handle work. However, his testimony still raised doubts among many people. During the investigation, the police also looked into the history of Coronado Mansion. They discovered that this mansion had witnessed many sad events in the past, including unnatural deaths. Many locals believed that Coronado Mansion was haunted by unsettled souls. A neighbor living near Coronado Mansion named Eleanor, an elderly woman in her 70s, recounted that she often saw dark figures lurking around the mansion at night. "I've lived here for many years, and I knew there was something wrong with that house," Eleanor said with a worried look on her face. "I often heard strange noises coming from there at night, like crying, whispering, and even footsteps." A former gardener who worked at Coronado Mansion, named Michael, also recounted his strange experiences. He said he sometimes felt like someone was watching him while he worked in the garden. And he also heard strange noises coming from inside the mansion when no one was there. "I never felt comfortable working there," Michael said. "There was always a cold, creepy feeling about the house." The accounts of local residents and former employees add to the mystery and horror of Rebecca White's death. Was she the victim of murder? Or was there some supernatural force that caused her death? These questions remain unanswered, and Coronado Mansion continues to be a haunted place, where Rebecca White's mysterious death has become one of the most terrifying stories. After Rebecca White's death was announced, public opinion was divided. Some believe it was a suicide, suggesting that Rebecca may have been suffering from some psychological stress she was unaware of. However, most people are skeptical of this conclusion, especially when the unusual details at the scene are revealed. A close friend of Rebecca's named Susan, a middle-aged woman with blonde hair, could not believe that Rebecca had committed suicide. Rebecca was a strong, loving woman. She loved Jonah and Max very much. There was no reason for her to take her own life like that. Susan said through tears when interviewed by reporters, "I believe that something terrible happened to her." People who knew Rebecca described her as a cheerful, energetic person who loved her family very much. They could not imagine that she would voluntarily harm herself, especially when she was caring for an injured child. Meanwhile, the police continued to investigate the case. They collected more evidence and interviewed people who might have information. However, they have not yet reached an official conclusion about the cause of Rebecca's death. A group of amateur investigators and mystery lovers have begun to look into Rebecca White's death themselves. They have carefully examined crime scene photos, read police reports, and analyzed witness statements. One of the details that made this group of investigators feel most suspicious was that Rebecca's hands and feet were tied tightly. They believe that it is very unlikely that a person who committed suicide could tie her hands and feet so tightly. This raises suspicions that someone else may have been involved in Rebecca's death. The investigation team also noticed a blood stain found on the balcony where Rebecca was found. According to the police report, the blood did not belong to Rebecca. This further strengthens the theory that there may have been a struggle or scuffle before Rebecca died. In addition, the investigation team also found some suspicious information about Jonah Black. They discovered that Jonah was having some serious financial problems at the time of Rebecca's death. This made them question whether Jonah was involved in Rebecca's death. While the amateur investigation team was trying to find the truth, strange phenomena began to occur at the Coronado mansion. Residents living nearby reported seeing unusual flashing lights in the mansion at night. Even though no one was inside, they also heard strange noises, such as footsteps, the sound of objects falling, and even creepy whispers. One night, a young couple living across the street from Coronado Mansion saw a woman's shadow standing on the second-floor balcony where Rebecca was found. The figure was wearing a long white dress and had long black hair hanging down. When the couple looked closer, the figure suddenly disappeared. Stories of the haunting at Coronado Mansion began to spread quickly, causing many people to feel scared and curious. Some believe that Rebecca White's spirit still wanders the mansion, seeking justice for her death. The rumors of a ghost at Coronado Mansion attract the attention of a paranormal investigation group called the Darkseekers. The group consists of 3 members. The leader is a middle-aged man named Mark, an expert in paranormal recording devices, Sarah, a psychologist with experience communicating with people who believe in ghosts, and Ben, a young technician who installs and monitors the devices. The Darkseekers contact Jonah Black, the owner of Coronado Mansion, and ask for permission to conduct an investigation at the mansion. Jonah is initially reluctant, but after Sarah convinces him that this investigation can help solve the mystery surrounding Rebecca's death and dispel the bad rumors about his house, he agrees. On a moonless night, the investigation team arrives at Coronado Mansion. They brought with them a variety of state-of-the-art equipment, including digital recorders, infrared cameras, electromagnetic energy (EMF) detectors, and thermography devices. They began setting up these devices throughout the mansion, focusing on the balcony where Rebecca was found and areas where locals had reported strange phenomena. Mark explained the plan to the members. "We'll split into 2 groups. Sarah and I will stay inside the house to monitor the devices and try to communicate with any presences. Ben will stay outside, monitoring the surrounding area and using infrared cameras to record any unusual activity." As night fell, the air in the Coronado Mansion became cold and quiet. The investigation team began their work. Sarah, with her exceptional sensitivity, tried to sense any energy or presence in the living room. She spoke softly. "Is anyone here? We're here to help." No response. The room was still eerily silent. Meanwhile, Mark was monitoring the readings on the EMF detector. Suddenly, the readings spiked abnormally. "Did you see that? There's a sudden change in energy here." Mark whispered, his eyes not leaving the screen. At the same time, Ben outside noticed something strange on the infrared camera. A blurry figure appeared on the second-floor balcony, right where Rebecca had been found. The figure stood still for a few seconds, then suddenly disappeared. Ben quickly called Mark and Sarah to inform them. "I just saw something on the camera. A figure on the balcony. I'm sure it wasn't me or anyone else in the group." Hearing the news, Mark and Sarah immediately ran to the second floor. They checked the balcony thoroughly, but found no trace. However, Sarah felt a cold chill envelop the area, and she had the feeling that someone was watching them. "I feel a very strong presence here," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "I think we should try to communicate again." Sarah stood in the middle of the balcony and said, "Hello? We know you're here. Is there anything you want to tell us?" A few seconds of silence passed, and then suddenly, a soft whisper sounded, as if someone was speaking right next to Sarah's ear. The whisper was very small, unclear, but Sarah could still make out a few words. "Suffering, lonely, help me." Sarah and Mark looked at each other in shock. They knew they had just made contact with a spirit trapped in the Coronado mansion. Little did they know that this communication was just the beginning of the terrifying experiences they were about to face. After hearing the mysterious whisper, Sarah felt a chill spread throughout her body. She looked at Mark with a worried gaze. "I think we just made contact with someone." The whisper, "It's very sad." Mark nodded, his expression serious. "I felt it too. We need to find out who this spirit is and why it's suffering." The group decided to focus on the balcony, where the strange phenomena seemed to be most concentrated. They placed additional recording devices and infrared cameras in this area, hoping to collect more evidence. That night, as the group sat in the living room monitoring the devices, a sudden loud noise came from upstairs. There was a crashing sound, as if someone had thrown something on the floor. Ben, who was in charge of the surveillance camera, quickly reviewed the footage. He was horrified to see an armchair in the upstairs bedroom move on its own and fall to the ground. Even though no one was in the room. "Everyone, come up here," Ben shouted, his voice filled with fear. Something just happened upstairs. Mark and Sarah immediately ran upstairs with Ben. They checked the bedroom where the armchair had fallen, but found no signs of forced entry. The window was still tightly shut, and there was no one else in the mansion except them. "This is weird," Mark muttered, unable to explain what had just happened. "Maybe we should put a fixed camera in this room to monitor." They decided to install an infrared camera capable of recording at night in that bedroom. The group then returned to the living room to continue monitoring the other devices. A few hours later, around 3 a.m., another strange phenomenon occurred. The temperature measuring devices in the living room simultaneously recorded a sudden drop in temperature. From normal temperature, the room became freezing cold in just a few seconds. Sarah, who had the ability to sense supernatural energy, hugged Mark's hand tightly, her face pale. "I feel a very strong presence here," Sarah whispered. "It's very angry." At that moment, the lights in the living room began to flicker erratically, then suddenly went out. The room was plunged into silence. The group stood in silence, listening to every sound around them. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out in the darkness, as if someone was standing right next to them. "You don't belong here. Leave immediately." The voice was full of malice and menace, sending chills down everyone's spine. "We don't want to hurt anyone. We just want to help," Sarah managed, her voice shaking slightly. "Help?" The voice was mocking. "No one can help us. We're stuck here forever." Then a series of loud bangs echoed throughout the house. Objects were thrown, doors were slammed, and screams of anguish were heard. The investigation team felt like a rage was being unleashed on Coronado Mansion. In the chaos, Ben was suddenly pushed against the wall by an invisible force, causing him to fall to the floor and hit his head on the edge of the table. He let out a painful cry and passed out. Mark and Sarah ran to Ben's aid in a panic. They shook him, but he still didn't wake up. Both of them were terrified. They knew that what was happening was no longer a normal investigation, but that they were facing a truly evil force. "We have to get Ben out of here right now," Mark told Sarah, his voice filled with concern. "This is too dangerous." They tried to help Ben out of the living room, but when they reached the door, an invisible wall seemed to block their path. They couldn't open the door, no matter how hard they tried. "We're trapped," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We can't get out." In the dark living room, Mark tried to shake Ben, but the technician lay motionless, breathing weakly. Sarah, her face pale with fear, stared at the closed door, as if waiting for something terrible to happen. "We have to do something, Mark. We can't just stand here." Sarah's voice trembled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mark squeezed Sarah's hand, trying to reassure her. "Calm down, Sarah. We'll find a way out. I don't think this door can hold us forever." He looked around the room, trying to find any object that could be used as a weapon or to break the door. Suddenly, a strange sound came from the direction of the stairs. It was a slow, heavy sound, like someone was dragging something across the wooden floor. Both Mark and Sarah fell silent, holding their breaths as they listened. The footsteps got closer and closer, then stopped right outside the living room door. An eerie silence fell over the room. Both of them felt like someone was standing right outside, staring at them through the crack of the door. Sarah hugged Mark tightly. She could feel his pounding heart. Suddenly, the door shook violently, as if someone was trying to break it down from the outside. The loud banging noises continued to ring out, causing the pictures hanging on the wall to shake. Mark quickly pushed Sarah behind him, standing in front of the door, ready to face whatever might happen. "Who's there? What do you want?" Mark shouted, trying to appear strong even though he was extremely scared inside. There was no answer. The banging on the door continued, getting louder and louder. Mark felt like the door was about to burst open. He looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with worry. "When the door opens, run out as fast as you can. Don't look back." Sarah nodded, tears still falling. She knew that this might be their only chance to survive. Finally, after a series of terrible noises, the door burst open. Before Mark and Sarah's eyes was a tall, dark figure, standing towering in the doorway. The figure had no clear face, just a mass of black, enveloped in a cold and terrifying aura. A hoarse, hateful voice rang out from the shadow. "You have trespassed here. Now you will pay." The shadow stretched out a long, bony arm towards Mark. He felt an invisible force pushing against him, pushing him back. Mark tried to resist, but he was completely helpless against this supernatural power. "Run, Sarah," Mark shouted, trying to draw the shadow's attention to himself. Sarah heard Mark's scream, and knew that she had to act immediately. She grabbed Ben's hand, who was still unconscious, and pulled him towards the window. With a tremendous effort, she broke the glass and jumped out. Mark watched Sarah, his heart filled with both worry and hope. He knew that Sarah and Ben might have a chance to survive if they ran fast enough. Mark then turned to face the shadow. He knew that he had no chance of winning, but he was determined not to let the shadow harm Sarah and Ben. He raised the cross he always carried with him, and began to recite the prayers. As the prayers rang out, the shadow seemed to burn. It let out a painful roar, then slowly dissipated into the air. Mark breathed a sigh of relief. But he knew that this was not the end. He was still trapped in Coronado Mansion, and the evil forces in this place were still very strong. Sarah dragged Ben out of the living room window, and the two of them fell onto the lawn behind the mansion. Ben was still unconscious, his head bleeding. Sarah tried to shake him, tears streaming down her face. "Ben, wake up. Please wake up." After a few minutes of extreme anxiety, Ben stirred slightly and slowly opened his eyes. He groaned and looked at Sarah with a dreamy gaze. What happened? We have to leave here immediately," Sarah said, her voice still trembling. "There's something very scary inside." The two of them tried to stand up and run away from Coronado Mansion. Not daring to look back, they ran until they reached the main road, where they could hail a taxi. Meanwhile, Mark was still inside the mansion, facing the evil forces. After the darkness dissipated, he felt a terrible coldness envelop the house. The whispers and moans rang out again, getting louder and more terrifying. Mark knew that he couldn't stay here any longer. He needed to find a way out before those angry spirits returned. He quickly ran downstairs, trying to find another way out. As Mark passed by the living room, he saw a large photo hanging on the wall. It was a photo of Rebecca White, the woman who had mysteriously died at this mansion. In the photo, she looked very fresh and happy. Mark paused for a moment, looking at Rebecca's face, feeling a deep sadness well up in his heart. "I'm sorry for what happened to you," Mark whispered. "I will try to find the truth and bring you justice." As soon as Mark finished speaking, Rebecca's photo suddenly fell to the ground, shattering into many pieces. A cold wind blew through the room, carrying a terrifying scream. Mark knew that he had angered the spirits that haunted this place. He hurriedly ran out of the living room and found a door leading to the back garden. Mark rushed out, running as fast as he could towards the fence. He heard footsteps chasing after him, and felt cold hands trying to hold him back. Finally, Mark climbed over the fence and ran outside. He looked back at the Coronado Mansion. The luxurious mansion now looked gloomy and scary under the dim moonlight. He knew that what happened in this place would haunt him forever. A few days later, the police conducted a thorough investigation at Coronado Mansion based on Sarah and Ben's statements. They found recording devices and cameras that the investigation team had installed. And this evidence somewhat confirmed the supernatural phenomena they had experienced. However, the cause of Rebecca White's death remains a mystery. Although the police still maintain the initial conclusion of suicide, many people still believe that there is some evil force that caused her death. Coronado Mansion still stands there, a symbol of wealth and luxury, but also a haunted and mysterious place. Many locals believe that the spirit of Rebecca White, and others who died at this mansion, still wanders there, forever imprisoned within the cold walls. The story of the mysterious death at Coronado Mansion continues to be told, becoming one of the most famous true horror stories in California. The supernatural phenomena that the Dark Seekers group has experienced have strengthened many people's belief in the existence of the afterlife. If you find this story creepy and want to discover more terrifying mysteries, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye and see you in the next videos.